Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Old Time Rock and Roll. I'm your host, David Tare, where I've been featuring all year my personal top 3,000 songs of the rock era from 1954 to 1999. Um, for the new people here, I've been doing this since January 1st. I started at number 3,000, and hopefully I'll finish at number one in about 8 years, 2032. Today I'm featuring song number 2734, which is Beechwood 45789 by the Marvelettes. They were a Motown group. I'll get into them later, but this song I think it went to number 17 on Billboard in 1962. Pretty big hit for them. And I want to say a little bit about the song first, then I'll go into the Marvel. The other thing I'm doing now is, I also decided to, include where each of the songs on my list came in according to acclaimmusic.com. They're a website, and I guess they made their own list of what they consider the top 10,000 songs of the rock era. And this one on their list came up at number 7,415, which it did make their list, but kind of by a margin. And I guess mine came in higher. I do like this song, it was one of those early girl group songs from the early '60s. They were very, girl groups were very popular, as I'm sure a lot of you guys know, during the early to mid '60s. I'd say from around 1960 to 1965, they were kind of the rage, and a lot of them came from Motown, including the Marvelettes. And it's just one of those, kind of typical girl group songs, not very deep or anything. Just, they're singing about, how they're interested in this boy. And in this case, I guess the girl who's interested in him gives him her phone number, which is Beechwood 45789. And I want to say a little bit about this because it seems, I guess today this seems like a peculiar way to tell people your phone number. But during I think, until the 1960s, this was actually very common. Beechwood refers to the telephone directory. I don't know if any of you guys remember, there used to be these big operating rooms. There'd be telephone operators. I don't think there are too many of them left, but each of these telephone directories where these operators used to work had their own directory assistance code, and it was really just the first two digits of the phone number. So in this case, Beechwood, you look on your phone, and I don't know how many guys have noticed this, but there's letters along with numbers on every telephone, and ABC. They do them in groups of three letters. I think there's two missing, Q and Z, but starting with two, 2 through 9. I guess two is ABC, three is DEF, goes all the way down until till 9. O was for the operator, but 9 was XYZ or what WXY. I'm not going to go through them all. You guys can figure them out. They're alphabetical, and like I said, Q and Z are missing. So it's pretty easy to see on your phone, or maybe you can even figure it out in your head. B, since that's one of the first three letters, that's a 2. And E, since that's in the second group of three letters, that's a 3. So the way people would say this number nowadays would be just with 7 numbers: 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. Another thing there's a couple other things I want to point out about this. First of all, I think today most people use 10 numbers, at least in America, most people use 10 numbers for their telephone number because they also include the area code. This didn't used to be the case. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, it was very rare that you made long distance phone calls. They were pretty expensive for one thing. And area codes used to be a lot bigger. Our population was smaller. So I think most area codes when I was a kid corresponded to an entire state. I guess some of the bigger, the ones with bigger population had multiple area codes. Now, I think there's something like 50 or 60 area codes around the country. There used to only be like maybe 15. So So even there's even some cities or metropolitan areas that have multiple area codes now. That didn't used to be the case, but so anyway, most people didn't give out their area code. They didn't really need to because most of the time they were just making local calls, so they didn't need to include an area code with it. Now I think it's necessary because I think you can't even dial a number now without including the area code as well. So I thought I'd mention that as well. And one more thing, I think it's kind of interesting. So if you convert this phone number to a, seven digits, which is a standard way to do it today, like I said, it would be 2345789. There was another hit song just a few years later by Wilson Pickett. It was called 6345789, titled Soulsville, USA. It only differed from this number by one digit, the first digit, which I think is interesting. I mean, maybe 45789, they're almost consecutive numbers. They just skipped a six. Maybe it was just an easy number to remember, and that's why they did it this way. I mean, for this case, they all are consecutive. They're 2 through 9, skipping 6. Not too hard to remember that number. And I actually only know one other song with a full phone number on it. That's 8675309 Jenny. That one is coming up later on my list, much later, actually. And an interesting thing, I'll just say one more thing about that. It turns out that I don't think this was intentional on Tommy Two Tone's part, but 8675309 happens to be a prime number, which I also think is interesting. I don't think 2345789 is, but I'd have to check. But anyway, enough of that. So I think that's pretty much all. Oh yeah, one more thing I want to say about this song. It was actually redone in 1982 by the Carpenters. They were a very big duo, kind of a mellow duo during the 70s. Most of their songs were sung by the woman in the group, Karen Carpenter. It was two brothers and sisters, Karen and I think the brother was David Carpenter. And unfortunately, Karen Carpenter died of anorexia in 1983, just a year after she released her version of Beechwood 45789, which only went to number 74. It wasn't even a top 40 hit. But I do remember hearing it. As a matter of fact, I think the first time I heard this song, I heard the Carpenters version. But I like the Marvelettes version a lot better. But anyway, so I think that's all I have to say about the song Beechwood 45789. Now I'm going to talk about the group that recorded it, the Marvelettes. Here's a picture of the Marvelettes. They were a Motown girl group. They were around from 1960 to 1970. Their original members were um, uh, Gladys Horton, Catherine Anderson, Georgiana Tillman, and Juanita Coward. They had other later in their career they had some other members as well, but that was their original lineup. And I'm just going to go through their hits, their top 40 hits. They had some other hits that made the Billboard Hot 100, but not the top 40. But I'm not going to go through those. So their top 40 hits. The first one went all the way to number one. That was "Please, Mr. Postman." Uh, I think that was actually the first number one song for the Motown label. I'm pretty sure it was. The first, I think, top 40 hit was, might have been Money That's What I Want by Barrett Strong, possibly Shop Around by Smokey Robinson, The Miracles. I'm not sure. It was one of those two, but neither of those went to number one. But Please Mr. Postman did. And that was followed later in 61 by Twistin' Postman, which only went to 34. The twist was another very popular. It was a very popular dance craze in the early 60s. So I guess they had a song about the twist as well. And then in 1962, they had Playboy, which went to number seven. They had the one I'm featuring today, Beechwood 45789, which went to number 17. And then in 1965, I guess they had a hiatus for a few years, but in 65, their next top 40 hit was called Too Many Fish in the Sea. That went to number 25. And later that year, they had I Keep Holding On, which went to 34. In 1966, they had Don't Mess with Bill, which went to number 7. In 1967, they had The Hunter Gets Captured, which went to number 13. They had When You're Young in Love, which went to 23. And finally, in 1968, they had My Baby Must Be a Magician, which went to number 17. So those were the top 40 hits for the Marvelettes. A good group. I think they were a really good Motown group, but I really like a lot of the Motown songs from the the 60s, and I've got many more of them on my list. Because a lot of them were classics. Anyway, I guess that completes my video on Beechwood 45789 by the Marvelettes. Thank you for watching. You guys rock, and I'll see you next time. Bye.